We're going to be starting our lettuce around mid-February. You may want to join in a little bit later if you don't have any undercover space. But the idea with this grow along is that we make sure that we are providing lettuce throughout the year and that we don't need to pick up any lettuce in the supermarket and avoid all that plastic, and homegrown lettuce is just so much better. The varieties that I have picked for this grow along include Lolo Rosa. You could also buy a green version called Lolo Blonde, so either of those will do absolutely fine. We're going for a Batavian variety called Maravilla di Verano. Probably pronouncing these completely wrong. I did say on the previous video that we were going to go for a variety called Moon Red, which is a cos. I didn't realise these were pelleted seeds and they're actually hugely expensive. So instead of those, we will be using a variety called Little Leprechaun. If you have already bought the Moon Red ones, then we will be looking at how to save seeds from these so you can make sure that you have that variety going forward and you don't need to buy that very expensive variety again. So those are all of our varieties that are going to be spring varieties. And actually I've gone for all red varieties. I haven't done that on purpose. If you want to add a green one in, then that's absolutely fine. And then our winter varieties are a cos called Winter Density and another one called Rogue de Hiver. These are going to grow very well under cover. And even if you have just like a little something covering or a cold frame outside, then you should be fine to grow them year round outside. If you don't have any protection at all, but you're down south, then you may also find that they're fine. I have had winter varieties completely covered in snow, and as long as they are sown early enough and they're mature enough at the point that they get that cold, they do actually pull through really well. But it does depend on each of the varieties individually of how hardy they are. So if you're up north and you get consistent, really heavy frosts, you may find that they don't do as well outside. Varieties that grow over winter are going to be growing really slowly for us as well. So they don't produce a huge amount over winter, but there is more than enough to pick for dishes as you go. But you may want to sow a few more at that time of the year to make sure that you have enough. All of these varieties are from Tama Organics. If you sign up for my newsletter, then you will get the discount code for them as well. They also produce a mixed variety, which you can use. You don't need to use these individual varieties. And then that will be cheaper than buying the individual ones if you don't want to have as many seeds as that. There's a huge variety of different lettuces that are available to buy as well. And actually they have different textures, different colours, lots of different things that we can enjoy from them. Some of them are going to produce entire heads that are tight and closed, and then some of them are looser leaves. The looser leaves ones will produce and produce and produce, or the ones that you can pick at the outside edge of are also going to produce more than the ones that you just take the entire head from. They're also easier to grow because the ones that you're picking the entire head of often actually run to seed and you won't manage to get the head as a whole. So different varieties that we have available to us are varieties called Butterhead, a Romaine or Cos variety, an Iceberg or Crisp Head variety. These ones can bolt quite easily. And then we have our loose leaves, our oak leaf varieties. So these are fantastic as baby greens as well. And then our Lolo varieties. These are one of my favourites. They're just beautifully and frilly. And then we have our Batavia varieties. And these ones are actually really good at managing the heat of the summer. So when we think about germinating lettuce, they will germinate quite well at lower temperatures, but actually they can struggle at higher temperatures. So during the summer, one of the things you can do is just pop them into a bit of shade and they still will germinate, but they can start getting a little bit leggy and run to seed quite quickly. So we just need to be careful of when we sow them. If it's in a complete and utter heat wave, then just wait for that to end and then we'll sow some more. This grow along will start mid-February and then we will continue with succession sowings. Usually around sort of every 2 months will be absolutely perfect, but if you have more needs, then every month will keep you in a constant supply. For us as a family of 3, we don't eat constant lettuce and salad throughout the year, we just add lettuce or side salads, then around sort of 5 to 6 plants at a time, and then the next succession of another 5 to 6 plants will keep us perfectly well all through the summer. And then through the winter, we'd be more looking at sort of 10 to 12 plants. Sowing seed depth is going to be very shallow. I actually prefer to surface sow, and then they will do very well from there, but we definitely don't want to bury them too deep. We're looking for a germination temperature of 15 to 21 Celsius, but I've definitely found that they do quite well under that as well, so that will depend on the variety. Final spacings, we're looking between 15 centimetres and 13 centimetres, so that could be 15 centimetres for like your oak leaf types that you're going to continue to pick the outer leaves, and 30 centimetres for whole heads. The other thing you could also do is take every other plant and leave the rest more space to grow. These will do well in semi-shade or in full sun, and you'll often be told not to grow them under cover. Actually, mine do really well in the polytunnel. They'll often be in the shade of the tomatoes or on the bench where they don't get a huge amount of shade, but as long as you're sowing them regularly and you're picking them regularly, that will help them to avoid going to seed, but that will also depend on the variety too. Lettuce is one of those really helpful plants that you can just sort of dot around the garden in spaces that come up. So you don't necessarily need to overly think about planning where they're going to go, except for maybe the first couple when your beds are getting quite full. We're going to want a little seed tray to initially start them in, and a dome will be helpful as well. And then we could also sow them directly into a small seed tray, and then some larger pots to get them ready for the garden will be perfect. With lettuce, they are something that slugs and snails really do enjoy, so we do want to avoid putting them out when they're really young, or if you want to direct sow them, you'll usually find that they will nibble on all the plants. So by putting them out when they're that bit bigger, we should avoid too much pressure from them. Also, interestingly, the slugs and snails usually don't like the red varieties. Other than the slugs, you may find that rabbits and birds can cause some issues. So if this is the case, you're really just looking at netting them, particularly when they're younger, or the whole way through if it is rabbits. If you're growing in more of a polyculture style, then you may find that you get away with the birds not actually managing to get to them. Root aphids can also cause us a bit of an issue, and you'll usually find that the plant will just start wilting and looking unhappy on the top. This is often something that happens in later autumn, and if that's the case, then we're just going to keep some spares in the background and put them somewhere else basically. Crop rotation will help to avoid this. If your plant has just been completely wiped out and you can pick the entire plant up from the base and it's been cut off, then it's likely leather jackets or wire worms. At that point, just have a little dig around and see if you can find the pest and move it, put it on the bird table, get rid of them. And once again, you just want to move them elsewhere if that's a problem. If you have managed to find the pest before they've multiplied too much, then the rest of the bed may be fine. Downy mildew can be an issue on older plants. If that is something that you struggle with, then ventilation is obviously going to help, and just continuing to pick outer leaves rather than trying to aim for the entire head of lettuce, and you should find that you'll get plenty of pickings. This usually is something that doesn't happen until later in the year anyway. So I hope you're going to join us for this grow along. There is nothing quite like some really beautiful homegrown lettuce, and it is so much better than supermarket lettuce. I do truly believe that absolutely everyone can grow these, even if it's some leaves in a windowsill and you keep sowing them for baby leaves. They're a fantastic thing to grow, and you'll save yourself a small fortune if you are actually buying lettuce regularly from the supermarket. So if you do have any questions, please do let me know. Please do comment and like and interact with the video as much as you can in order to make sure that we have plenty of other people joining in. We have lots of older grow alongs as well as perennial grow alongs that are continuing over on YouTube as well if you want to check those out.